I know Sac State is thrilled to be playing in the MAC this year, to be a part of MACtion, but we all know what they really want.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Nebraska's schedule, yikes. Colorado's schedule, double yikes. We've got a double yikes on today's show. You'll have to stick around to hear exactly why. This episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sac State to the MAC. It'd be cool if it was for some reason the MAC State, but that's, of course, what I affectionately refer to the new Pac-12 as. The Pac State. Everybody has got to have state in their name. That's an unwritten rule. All 8 schools that play football have got state in their name. So Sacramento State, just by that alone, qualifies as a potential expansion target down the line. They just they check that box, and it's obviously a very important box. I would also like to point out, for those watching on YouTube, this is the best I could do to replicate the all-white uniforms of Sacramento State, which I will say are crispy, clean, and really good. Now, Sacramento State, as I talked about earlier this week, very much embraced an any port in a storm mentality. And in their defense, it's very stormy out there. It's not ideal sailing conditions. You're not taking a boat that doesn't have a good engine, probably 2 good engines on it, out there into those weather conditions. And they're just looking for any port once they got out into the storm and said, we don't want to be FCS, but we're not allowed to be FBS independent. We've got to dock the boat somewhere. It cannot just sit out here in the storm. And look, there's a light on. There's a light on over at that port. Now, is it the best port that you could ever be a part of? No. Was your ship or boat fully prepared to go and sail in such conditions and thrive and come out the other side arguably better, more resilient? Maybe not. The MAC does provide an opportunity. Remember, this is a 5-year deal, just 5, between Sacramento State and the MAC. And as I discussed yesterday, there's no downside to this for the Mid-American Conference. You're getting paid. Your teams are going to have their travel covered to save them some money over the course of the season for when they make a trip out to Sacramento. We'll see what their schedule ends up looking like. And then you have another team in your conference to bring your total number of football playing schools to 10. And everything's a lot easier with even numbers. That's a widely agreed upon point. And for Sacramento State, they're willing to take a deal like this because they're auditioning for the Pac-12. They wanted to be a part of it, and the Pac-12 said, no, we're okay. And I think that was a smart move on the conference's part. Because when you're fighting a brand and perception battle against the other group of 6 leagues in the country, which you absolutely are, having an FCS school, even one like North Dakota State, wouldn't have made as much sense. That probably would have been the only FCS school for the Pac-12 that would have made any sense. And in the future, could indeed make sense. If they go to the Mountain West and they start thriving, we all know the Pac-12's number one most desirable school in the New World Mountain West is UNLV. That's who they would like. But UNLV is sticking with the Mountain West. Okay. You got a TV deal. Everything's been signed, sealed, delivered. Okay. One day, if the Pac-12 were to go after 2 schools, let's say 5-6 years from now, those 2 schools would be UNLV and North Dakota State in a perfect world. But here's your chance, Sacramento State. Here's an opportunity because you can't get tagged with that FCS label. You don't have that kind of negative aura or that stigma that comes with playing at an entirely different division of college football. If they go to the MAC and in a 5-year span, I don't think there's a hard number. It's one of those things that I'm not putting a specific number on how many wins. It'll be kind of a vibes and kind of a feel thing. At the end of that 5-year run, we will all know, okay, if you're the Pac-12, go at them, because it makes geographic sense. They've got state in their name. That was mostly a sarcastic point, just to be clear. Though there is something to that. The Pac State Conference, it's got a little brand. It's got a little Pac-12, Pac State After Dark. I'm throwing it out there. Anyway. I don't think Sacramento State's the last school they would ever at. Having geographic proximity to the other schools in your conference has some value. But what Sacramento State would have to do between now and then, at least one conference championship. I don't think they would have to make a college football playoff appearance at all. Because when you're playing in the Mid-American Conference, frankly, that's not a reasonable expectation. But you'd probably have to have more winning seasons than not, and you'd have to throw a conference championship in there. And then all these fundraising goals and all the chatter that has come out in the last couple weeks about the value of this for Sacramento State and what they're saying it's worth, you've got to be able to deliver on a good amount of that. You have to have people tune in, watch your games get played at home, and it's got to feel like it's at a higher level of football. Because if you tune into the home games and it's flat, that's one of the reasons North Dakota State works. If you tune into a North Dakota State game on TV, it feels like a high major football game because the place is packed and you watch the quality football and go, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. So you can't have that dead sort of feel. In the MAC, sure, you can get away with it, but you now, if you're Sacramento State, have to make yourself, if that's your ultimate goal, and I strongly suspect that it is, you have to make yourself valuable. Not, hey, add us. We're the best of the bad options. No, you have to stand out. You have to do things in the next several years that make you recognizable, that make you familiar, that make you popular, exciting, forward-moving, all those positive adjectives. And that is something that's accomplished both on and off the football field. So they've got a tall task ahead of them, but they've got a chance. They've got a 5-year audition period to see if the Pac-12 would pick them up, or if the Mountain West, frankly, would pick them up, because they're not that far from San Jose State, who's still in the Mountain West. And would you rather play in the Mountain West or the MAC? Well, of course you'd rather play in the Mountain West. So kind of works out for both sides from that standpoint. The MAC, no downside. Sacramento State, no long-term commitment. And you've got a seat at the table. You're playing a higher level of football, and now you have to go out there and prove it. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. Nebraska. We're pivoting to Nebraska. Speaking of conference realignment moves that haven't worked out very well, the Cornhuskers are in for a tough year. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience is right there waiting for you. So if you look at the NBA standings and you think you know who's making the NBA Finals or who's going to win the NBA Finals, that might be a future bet you're interested in if you know ball, popular phrase online. Maybe you think the Cavs are breaking through, the Sixers, the Pistons. Somebody's going to win the East. Do you know? Well, you can put your knowledge to the test with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. So, let's say you've got things piling up, workplace chaos, deadlines, your inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. They help you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for, with things like the skills that you need, the experience, the location, so you're not just hoping a candidate stumbles across your job post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data, worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need a job filled, that's a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast. You can get a $75 sponsored job credit for listeners of the show at Indeed.com/podcast. And support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, that is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Last year, Nebraska was a semi-trendy playoff pick because of their favorable schedule. They will be getting no such favorability from anybody that knows college football this year. Connor Happer of Locked On Cornhuskers is here because he understands to what I am talking about right now. So, Connor, I don't know if there's a bigger schedule 180 in the wrong direction for a program in the country than Nebraska's schedule last year to Nebraska's schedule this year. For those who don't have it memorized, they have a non-conference slate that is ridiculously easy, unacceptably weak. It's got North Dakota, Bowling Green, and Ohio. It's not okay. It's not okay for anyone to do that. Big Ten play at Michigan State, Maryland. Okay, you're all right there. Indiana at Oregon, Washington at Illinois. Gross. At Rutgers, Ohio State at Iowa. I mean, what was your reaction when this schedule came out? Because yikes, man.
So last year in 2025, it was pretty well set up for them. And they, for the most part, with the exception of the Minnesota game, did what they were supposed to do. They almost beat Michigan at home in the early portion of the season. And people were thinking, hey, if they can somehow pull off a win in that game with a big crowd and all that stuff, then there's a way where they head into that USC game at what would it be? 8-0, 7-0, 8-0 at that point. And that's, for the most part, they were kind of on track to do that. They had a horrible performance on a Friday night game at Minnesota. No show, like a complete what the hell happened in this game. And then, so came out of that stretch, that first 8-game stretch at 6-2, and you're like, okay. And then the backstretch was USC, UCLA, Penn State, and Iowa, and they ended up going 1-3 in that stretch. And that's how the season ended up at 7-5. It's been a similar story around here for a while. And honestly, this season provides a little bit of the same fodder, as you mentioned, garbage, non-con slate. I'm glad that we agree on this. Nebraska is one of the programs that needs to be playing a Power 5 team. It was supposed to be Tennessee this year. They backed out of the game. So
when did Tennessee do that? I must have missed that.
This was prior. I think Nebraska did it. Well, or maybe it was mutual, whatever. But the game does not exist anymore, which is sad for both fan bases. And they go on with playing their crap non-con slate with Ohio, Bowling Green, and North Dakota. But then, so you look ahead, as you mentioned, at Michigan State, home against Maryland, and there's once again reason for people to believe, hey, maybe you could be 5-0 going into that big Indiana game, who's more than likely going to stay the number one team in the country because of their garbage non-con slate throughout that period of time. And we're setting up for like a top 20, at least top 25 game at that point. It's hard for me to really buy into that at this moment. With that being said, there's only a couple landmines in there. I somehow knew that they were just going to go Indiana, Oregon back to back. It just felt like that was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. Bye week, Washington at Illinois, at Rutgers, and then finishing with Ohio State and Iowa. Nebraska always has a tough finish to their season with Iowa, and they somehow get matched up with, last year was Penn State, short week, Iowa. This year it's Ohio State, short week Iowa.
Yeah.
So it's really, really a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the back half of their schedule, 4 of their final 6 games are on the road, having to play Indiana, then at Oregon in back-to-back weeks. I don't know that there's a good way one of those games is at home and one is on the road. If they were both on the road, that would have been pretty ridiculous, of course. But I don't think there's a good outcome because both are going to be great teams. Both are going to be really tough environments to go into there. Like I had the thought for a moment, oh man, would have been better if you'd gone at Indiana and had Oregon at home. But then it went, well, I don't know. Is it?
Yeah. Well, we knew the opponents earlier, obviously. And I think for actually how, and then you find out the dates. When the dates came out, I was kind of like, well, there's no way you could really manufacture this where it's good. So you're trying to mitigate the damages and, it really worked out okay from like the where the opponents are at perspective when you knew that Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, and Iowa were all and not to, say anything bad about Washington or Illinois, who Nebraska will have a tough time beating in both of those games as well. Like it kind of worked out okay from where the games are perspective. One really, really tough back-to-back with Indiana and Oregon, and then one really, really tough to back-to-back on a short week at the end of the year with Ohio State and Iowa. But, a large portion of your season, the book of your season is going to be written that Iowa game as always, depending on where they're at beforehand. So it kind of worked out okay based on you knew the opponents you were going to have.
Yeah. I see that part of it. It's just playing Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. Those are, in my book, top 3 teams in the Big Ten and 3 of the top 5 to 6 teams in all of college football, and you have to play them in the same season. You get 2 of them at home. Okay, that's half a break in there. But man, our friends at FanDuel haven't released a win total for Nebraska yet. That'll probably come out sometime in the spring. Even with that start, which should, emphasize on should be 5-0 to begin the year, they might not get many AP top 25 votes sitting there at 5-0 because of who they will have played at that point. And as we know, voters like to do, they'll anticipate the looming losses that are coming on the schedule. I bet FanDuel sets this win total, Connor, at 6.5. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be shocked. Not kidding. Would not be shocked if it's even as low as 5.5. Last year it was 7.5. I thought that was low. I think it was an easy over bet, but Dylan Raiola got hurt, and then the end of the season went awry. But I can't see how Nebraska has the resurgent season to the Big Ten championship game picture.
Yeah, it's 6.5 feels like the right number for me. That's sort of what I was thinking in my head too. And it's been a pretty steady source of income if you've been betting the unders on Nebraska for years and years and years, because it gets put at 7.5, and you're like, well, yeah, maybe they start there, but of course they'll probably slip up in one of the games where they're supposed to win, and then that back half of the schedule looks tough. That's sort of been the stock thing over the years, and this looks probably, like you said, one game worse as far as the difficulty is concerned. There's reasons. There will be reasons. We might talk about one for optimism for Nebraska football this year. The schedule is going to be a challenge to manage for sure.
They're going to manage it most likely with the reigning Mountain West Player of the Year, who has Power 4 experience at quarterback in Anthony Calandria, and Dan Mullen rehabilitated him in the eyes of the Power 4 world in a pretty significant way to wind up in Nebraska. When he transferred from Virginia, I don't think Nebraska or any serious Big Ten team would have gone after him at quarterback, but you go lead the Rebels to the Mountain West championship game, and you do it with your legs as much as you do through the air over there. Is there cause for serious optimism with him likely at quarterback after the whole Kenny Minchie debacle?
People will look at the room. Nebraska is pretty well set up as far as the room is concerned. They have 3 guys in the room who have started Power 5 games, and Calandria and TJ Lateef, who started a couple games last year for Nebraska, and then Daniel Kalen, who started at Nebraska, went to Virginia, and now is back at Nebraska as an Omaha guy. And you're like, all right, well, if something goes bad, then you have some options there. That has never been my style of thinking. It's got to be how good your starter is. And so Nebraska has to figure out an identity on the offensive side of the ball. They will have a quarterback who is a risk taker, will throw interceptions, will also add in the run game as well. And so I think there's a trade-off there, and where it lands as far as his safety with the football is going to be just such a huge part of this season. That paired along with the defense, who was just a leaking sieve at the end of last year, went out and got a new defensive coordinator in Rob Orich from San Diego State. And, we'll see how quickly that can come together. It will be better, I think, on defense for them. It's just how much better is going to tell a lot of the story this season than how much Calandri is going to turn over the football, because he's going to, because his history says he's going to.
Big challenge for Big Red. Connor Happer, Locked On Nebraska. Appreciate the time, my man. When we get back, Colorado's schedule with one of my other favorite coordinator hires. Nebraska made one of them with Rob Aurich as defensive coordinator. Will they be back in the Big 12 championship game discussion? That's coming up next.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Will Colorado be a rubber band team and snap back into place in the Big 12 championship discussion this year? To answer that question, I've got my guy Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs, and no better place to start when examining that question, Kevin, than what does your schedule look like? Because Northwestern, for many reasons, isn't going to win the Big Ten, but their schedule makes sure they're definitely not going to win the Big Ten. If you don't have the right breaks, then it's probably not going to work out. I look at Colorado's schedule, and I got to tell you, is that your reaction to it as well? Because that was the best reaction I could come up with.
You go two perspectives. You could make the noise that you're making. Hopefully no one's watching this without video and just hearing those noises, or you can look at it and be like, they're going to be tested by the time October rolls around. For those of you that aren't familiar, Colorado has 3 road games in their first 4 weeks. So they start the year in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. They get to come back home and play Weber State. Shout out Damian Lillard. Then they go to, that makeshift stadium that Northwestern has out there? Is that the real stadium? I don't know.
In Evanston.
Yes, they're going to be playing on the lake. And then they go to Waco, the land of Chip and Joanna Gaines, to play DJ Lagway-led Baylor squad. So that's a tough first few weeks. But at the same time, if you think Colorado made the right adjustments with their coaching staff and the right adjustments with their players, I think you're looking at that first 4-game slate going, we should be 3-1, 4-0.
I'm really excited to watch Colorado early in the season because Brennan Marion is one of my favorite coordinator hires for anybody in the entire offseason. And you're right that they're going to be challenged right away. I mean, the Georgia Tech game, frankly, is a bit of a wild card. Georgia Tech, I don't think is going to be what they were last year. Now, I think Brent Key has established them as a high-floor program, so I don't think there's a cratering fall-off but you've got no Haynes King and you've got no Buster Faulkner, your offensive coordinator. Those two guys were making that thing go. And then, speaking of Northwestern, in case you all think I do this show by accident, I definitely don't. I think about everything that we talk about on here. Northwestern on the road is a sneaky tough game. That's a bowl team in the Big Ten from last year that's got offensive coordinator Chip Kelly and quarterback Aiden Childs. I'm at least intrigued by that matchup. But then it's Big 12 play, because we're just talking Big 12 championship, not playoff. I don't think that's reasonable for Colorado going into this year after the season that they had. At Baylor, Texas Tech, and Utah to start Big 12 play. There's a bye before they play the Utes at home, at least. But, man, I don't know that there are many tougher starts in a 3-game span to conference play in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough, honestly. That easiest game of that slate is at Baylor, and you're kind of just hoping, not hoping, but obviously everything's going to go right for Colorado. That is the main hope, where it's like Brennan Marion's offense clicks, JuJu Lewis takes that next step. The defense isn't a disaster, but you look at the schedule and you go, okay, well, it'd be nice if Dave Aranda starts to Dave Aranda by this point, right? Baylor's going to be 4 games into the season, and Dave Aranda is, I mean, his seat is as hot as it gets. I don't even know if he's still sitting on his seat. He may just be hovering over it, but does he turn things around with DJ Lagway? I don't know. And then Texas Tech, you're wondering, are they able to replace that $8 million defensive line, right? They paid a lot of money to do it again, but is it going to be the same caliber guys? Is Brendan Sorsby that guy? Or was he just sort of benefiting from picking on weaker opponents last year? I don't know, right? So we're going to find that out, but Utah is scary regardless. They return. I mean, Utah hung almost 60 on Colorado, so I think there should be a little bit of fear there, but I think worst case scenario for that 3-game stretch, you're 0-3. Like, that is very much in play. I think best case scenario, you're sitting at 2-1, right? You kind of maybe you knock off Utah and you knock off Baylor and you lose to Texas Tech. And I think most people would go, that's great, right? We survived that 3-week stretch.
I think when you include the non-conference there in the first half of the season, you're going to beat Weber State. Everybody knows that. At least I hope. Yeah. Hopefully we're way off the rails, or else
the Wildcats aren't like North Dakota State 2.0 and just all of a sudden pushes.
Yeah, if Weber State goes to Folsom Field and walks out with a win, then a certain parent of a certain player, former player, will feel rather vindicated in that scenario. But I think given that start, I think 3-3 is acceptable. 2-4 is where I probably feel they're going to wind up right now. I do wonder about Utah because they lost a number of guys going to Michigan with Kyle Whittingham, and I think Morgan Scalley will be just fine as the head coach. But you have him at home off a bye. I wouldn't be shocked. I think between that and Baylor, you got to find a way to pick one up. And between Northwestern and Georgia Tech, you got to find a way to pick one of them up. And then you'd probably
Colorado's at a point where it's like there's no longer like, they were supposed to beat us, right? You are now at the point where it's like you have to steal a win or two. Otherwise, this season, like, it's kind of crazy to think, because I feel like Deion's first year fell off the rails relatively quick. And I feel like this past year fell off the rails relatively quick. But this year, you could, I would say, this is like press the emergency button. We're talking about maybe hot seat chatter. You're sitting at the October 10th bye week with 1 win over Weber State, and you're 1-3. With losses to Georgia Tech, Baylor, Texas Tech. Then you're playing Utah at Oklahoma State, who's probably going to be one of the more rubber bandy teams, as you sort of patented earlier. And so you, in a terrible world, some might call it hell, could be 1-5, 1-6 through the midway through the season. And that's nowhere where you want to be. And so you have to be able to steal these wins and prove you're a better team. Spencer, my one question before we go back to what you're saying, sorry to interrupt you.
You're good.
Colorado, Georgia Tech's on a Thursday. Does that make you feel any different? Because I feel like that's when things get weird, is when we're on random days.
I think during the season, yes. When it's the first game of the year, no. Okay. I saw that, and my only reaction to it was, okay, great, we get college football earlier because we're waiting too long. This year's calendar is so bad. I don't know what genius came up with it, but man, It's so awful. We're waiting until after my birthday, which we've never done. We've never waited until after my birthday, September 3rd, to start playing college football. That's never been the case, so I hate that. The national championship is January 25th. It's all a mess. It's all a mess. And yeah, 1-5 would be disaster. 2-4, you're teetering there. 3 wins, solid. 4, real good. 5 wins, and we're talking conference championship or bust for the second half of the year. 6 wins, Colorado's ranked inside the top 15, probably, maybe even inside the top 10. So now you would think after that tough start to Big 12 play, Kevin, that the back half would soften up. Au contraire. And this is why I'm on Colorado's schedule. At Oklahoma State, very winnable game. They'll be improved, but I don't know if they're all the way back just yet. Kansas State at
Indiana?
I think Indiana's 1 of 1. That is my hot take for the day. Kansas State at Arizona State, and then hosting Houston before at Cincinnati and UCF. Very manageable end of the year. But that 3-game stretch again, yeah.
I mean,
I don't think Colorado goes. I don't think Colorado goes winless there.
Yeah.
I just don't know how many wins it's reasonable to expect with a first-year full-time starting quarterback.
Yeah, from October 3rd, which is the Texas Tech game, and you could probably even go September 26th, which is at Baylor. From then until November 14th, which is 2 months, Colorado is going through an absolute gauntlet. That being said, if they really made the improvements that I think they did, I think the schedule looks scarier than it actually is, right? Because as we talk about each of these teams, it's like, okay, let's go through each team. Utah, first-year head coach, right? They lost their offensive coordinator, savant Jason Beck, is now at Michigan calling plays for Bryce Underwood. They also lost Smith Snowden. They lost a lot of key guys there. Oklahoma State, they were in the depths of college football this past year, and they improved their roster dramatically. Is that going to be enough to be a scary team? They remind me Big 12 circa 2020 or not 2014, excuse me, where it's going to be like they're probably going to hang 60 on you, but you're probably going to hang 50 to 65 on them. Right. So it's like, can you outscore them? So there's that. Kansas State, first time head coach Colin Klein. I wasn't impressed with Kansas State at all last year, and I don't really know if they made the roster improvements. I feel like their roster kind of got worse, if I'm being honest. I mean, Kansas State.
No, they lost Austin Romaine. He went to Texas Tech. Jace Brown went, I believe, to LSU, their stud wide receiver. You're not wrong. They lost a couple big pieces. They do have Avery Johnson back. Right. But, and they added my guy Jay Harris at running back. But yeah.
Right. But Avery Johnson didn't take the step we all thought he would. And then Arizona State, it's Cutter Boley. And it's like, do we trust Cutter Boley? I would probably say yes, because he was decent enough on a bad Kentucky team. But I'm playing this is for Colorado fans right here. Like, your first-time quarterback with a bunch of new weapons, or I guess second-time quarterback. And then Houston, are they able to take that next step? That's my question, because I feel like Colorado had them on the ropes with Ryan Staub. With a better quarterback, I think that situation could be different. And that's now Tennessee quarterback Ryan Staub to you, Spencer. And then Cincinnati and UCF, I think those are both winnable games. I'm not scared of either of those. So in a terrifying world, it's like, yeah, Colorado could lose that entire stretch, right? That's just how the way the sport goes. But I don't think you bring in Brennan Marion from future MAC program, Sac State, and not have that success, right? I think he's going to revitalize this offense. I think Colorado's going to be way different than what we've seen. And I think they should win 6 to 8 games this year. I don't know if it's always going to be pretty, but I think they can win 6 to 8 games. 8 is my ceiling.
I think that's a reasonable take. That's why we bring him on. Kevin Borba, Locked On Gloves. He just looks reasonable in those glasses. That's the real reason that he's got sharp takes. If he took them off, if he went contacts, this segment would have been off the rails a long time ago. Thankfully, it wasn't. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.